See if this sounds familiar. You did all the preparation for your big meeting and big presentation. You put together some great work. You thought you delivered it beautifully, but it just didn't quite land. Well, maybe it wasn't what you said, but maybe it was how you were saying it and how you were delivering it. In today's roundtable, we're going to talk about one of those 5 key attributes. Number 4, Omni-Mode and Omni-Channel Communication. Maybe it's what you need, that next little push to help you secure that next great presentation. Come along, check it out. Hi, everybody. Al Turano, Bridget, and Jessica here, Career North Star. Welcome to today's Roundtable series. We're going to be talking about the next attribute in the 5 attribute suite. That one is Omni-Mode and Omni-Channel Communicating. Sounds like a mouthful. I know it does. Totally cool. We're here to break it down for you little by little and how you can survive and thrive in your career using great communication across every different avenue at your disposal. So let's just kind of hop right into it. First of all, omni-channel communication. Omni-channel is the ability to communicate with a variety of different people in a way where you can meet them where they are. From the very high level, like leadership, executive leadership, very low level, like subject matter expert, or at a project or work stream level, very technical, like kind of over here. That doesn't necessarily mean like computer technical per se. I mean like technical, like discipline based. Somebody who is like a doctor, a lawyer, a plumber, or a carpenter. The ability to communicate with them at some level where they can understand it clearly and easily for them. And then where you have the very technical on the other side, you have the not so technical. People who you need to enable and help them because they don't understand the topic that you're talking about or the solution or the problem. So you have to bring them along in a very non-technical or very simplified way. That's omni-channel communication. Bridget, does that make sense?
Absolutely. Makes sense to me.
Jessica?
It does. Yes,
I'm
it
so
does.
glad of that. Omni-mode is the other side. It's so interesting to me when you talk to people who've been in business for a long, long time, and they think about how they used to communicate with people. So many times it was face to face, of course, or you picked up the phone, or you would send them a letter. Then along came the fax. Then along came email. And now, as those generational shifts and technological shifts have occurred, now it's, well, I don't even know what a fax machine is, but I've got text, I've got chat, I've got face-to-face, I've got a variety of modes of software that I communicate with people. I'm emailing them at the same time that I'm talking to people on a Zoom call, at the same time that we're on a Teams chat. Things like body language, things like word choice, in a global business environment, things like cultural considerations that you need to consider, right? You need to worry about and consider as well. Do I type something in all caps? Do I type something in bold? Do I put an exclamation point on the end? May or may not be well received. So it's the ability to communicate with people in a variety of different modes, given the channel they're in. One last quick example. If you have a meeting at the C level, say with the CFO of the organization, and you would think they probably deal, when in doubt, they deal with Excel, right? The language of financial business is Excel. And you worked all day, all night for this Excel spreadsheet that you've created, and you bring that to the CFO in a meeting, they're going to try and decipher what you're talking about in your 5,000 row, 200 column spreadsheet, and you're going to say, hey, CFO, take a look at this particular formula in this column and row. They're going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Get out of here. Go see the finance manager. For me, I want 3-4 slides that tell me what's the background, what's the current state, what's the future state, what's the decision or alternatives that need to be made, the consultative framework we talked about. Likewise, if you took those 2 or 3 or 4 slides to the finance manager, they would say, let me see the spreadsheet, right? It would take 30 seconds. Likewise, if you were to take that same spreadsheet and you were to give it to someone very technical, they would say, well, look at the colors, look at the conditional formatting, look at the font, look at. If you take it to someone who's not so technical in that area, they'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. You're going to have to explain it to me from the ground up. It's that omni-mode into an omni-channel environment. When you could do those two things successfully from a communication standpoint, wow, will you find success, because people will gravitate towards you because they'll be able to understand you and you'll be able to understand them. Let me pause. Jessica, give some thoughts on Omni-Mode, Omni-Channel Communication.
Absolutely. In your role, you're likely engaging with so many different people with different backgrounds and also across different platforms. And each person brings their own context, their own priorities and expectations. Everyone has their own agenda. So like Al said, you have to really meet people where they are. But before you communicate, really understand like who you're talking to. And that means taking the time, like asking thoughtful questions and really listening actively, listening more than you talk at the beginning, because that'll help you tune in to what really matters to them. What are they focused on? What do they care about? And then also get to know them and how they best communicate. Do they prefer you picking up the phone? Is everything a phone call, or do they prefer a Teams message or an email? And what does the situation call for? So that requires a level of emotional intelligence and awareness. But effective communications can set you apart so quickly early in your career, and you don't have to know it all to be good at it. I promise. You will meet so many people who actually really struggle with clear and concise communication. So recognize that it takes time to develop that skill, but you can get really good at it really quickly if you do the tips and tricks that we've started talking about.
Yeah, Jessica, I want to add on to what you were saying and take a step back. I think the biggest thing that you can do if you're trying to build your communication skills is, number one, you need to listen more than you're speaking, especially if you're new in a role, especially if you're starting out on a different team or engaging with people that you haven't engaged with before. If you take time to listen to their questions and really understand what they're trying to get out of your communications are going to be so much more effective if you actually are answering their questions in the right way. And Al, I love that example of the CFO not understanding the spreadsheet and wanting a slide with the facts, because it's so true, where the CFO could be asking, how much money do we make last quarter? And they don't want to see all the details, where the finance manager could be asking the same question on paper, but they want all of the details. And so listening to their questions, understanding where they're coming from, and again, meeting them where they are is so, so, so important. And I would just encourage everyone listening and here with us today to listen more than you speak. And then when you do speak, make sure that you're actually addressing the unsaid parts of people's questions.
Yeah, great call outs, both of you. I want to touch on two things. I want to share with you another example, and then also want to talk about the cultural considerations as well in today's global business environment. So I think from an example standpoint, we have a lot of our subscribers and people who watch us always come back and they say, give us more concrete examples. Like they love the content, but then they're like, give me more, kind of example. I can tell you for a fact, I had a meeting some years ago, and Bridget and Jessica, I'm going to invite you into this as well. A meeting I recall some years ago with a leader. We were doing a rather large project for them and with them, and the big thing that I noticed after about 20 minutes of me just PowerPoint vomit, let's call a spade, right? I'm up there doing my thing. This solution is the greatest thing in the world. It's going to be super awesome. Let me show you this slide and this slide and that slide. It took me 20 minutes, and I noticed our stakeholder was just staring out into space, then looked at his phone, then leaned over to a colleague talking about something. And I finally not only picked up on it, but then shared it with him, saying, hey, do you have a question? And he came back and he said, you lost me 3 slides ago. And I said, well, I wish you would have said something. And he said something. He said 2 things to me. The first thing he said is, I just assumed I was going to be able to catch up like on the next slide, but he never did. Consequently, the stakeholder, the one writing the check for us, was lost in the solution that I was proposing to him. 1, 2, he took this offline with me and he said, Al, never assume just because you know something, someone else knows it too. And that honestly is the advent for the ability to talk with someone in an omni-channel manner who doesn't get it and bring them along. In our second meeting after we had made some updates to our proposal and came back and talked with it, and I remember saying to him in the meeting, are you with me? And he said, yes, this makes sense. And that's where, for those of you who know me rather well, when you hear me say, does that make sense? To this day, it's a lesson I learned, a very powerful and very humbling lesson as well. So just a consideration. By the way, we ended up getting the project as a result. A very complicated solution, but the ability to simplify it so that everybody could understand it. Bridget, talk to an example that you have of either Omni-Mode or Omni-Channel communication.
Yeah. I would say I have an example that's kind of, I don't know, just made me think of that when you were talking about PowerPoint slides. One of my first engagements that I was a part of, one of the stakeholders we were presenting to and that I was preparing for, I prepared a deck for the stakeholder, and I had spent most of my week on this PowerPoint deck. And I had practice, I had a script, I had everything ready to go, everything that I thought he could ask about. And he comes into the meeting and he says, I don't do PowerPoint slides, and then asks to see the details. And it's just, I think that's such a great example of how you can use all of the tools that you have at your disposal and think you're ready to go. But then if you don't listen to what your stakeholder or the person you're presenting to actually wants, then you're never going to get your message across. Well, for me, I thought PowerPoint was the best way to go, and I thought that was going to do it and we were going to be good to go. That was me. And that's not who has the checkbook. That's not who's making the decisions. It was the person on the other end of that. So I had to adapt and communicate a different way to make sure that, he got what he wanted out of the meeting. And that was just something when you were talking about the slides. I've had that happen to me before where he said, I don't do slides.
I clearly remember that, by the way. Jessica, the other consideration that we started to talk about was cross-cultural. We're in a global business environment. There's no doubt about it. We have colleagues all around the world, certainly. Talk a little bit about that. Some of the considerations, and certainly for you as a multilingual person, by the way, certainly the considerations for you and in dealing with a project that is global in nature, or with stakeholders who are not local.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And when you're in a kind of complex environment, or even just, it doesn't even have to be complex. Like I said, you're working with a bunch of people with different backgrounds. And so I think the listening and really observing, like, how does this person operate? And why, and understanding that and taking the time to get to know them is going to help you be successful in your role. And also realize, okay, maybe this person of this type of background prefers things to be more formal, and I should go to them with an email, more formal update versus like an informal exchange, or quick sort of casual check-in. So I think getting to know the person is going to help you assess how to approach them when you do go to communicate with them. And then also, like, some people you'll find, it goes with the formality, but are more professional and polished, and others use a more casual tone. My recommendation for you starting out in your career is start professional and polished. And remember, you're always building your brand. Don't start too casual. Keep it professional and keep it formal as you build relationships. Remember, this is your job and you're in the workplace, and these are your coworkers. Like Al has talked about before, they're not friends. We're not family. We're on a team, and these are my coworkers, and these are other coworkers that I'm working with. All that to say, maintain that level of professionalism, especially early in your career. I think sometimes I've seen people get a little bit too casual and informal in their communications, and it's not a good look, especially if you do that with someone who does happen to be a little bit more formal, and less casual.
In the international sense, when you talk about the written word, again, let's talk about the scenario. You're in a meeting, you're on a Zoom call, a video call, we'll say, of some sort. You have somebody who's perhaps sharing content, and you're chatting back and forth at the same time. Someone's in the car at the same time, and they're on their phone, and they're pinging you in text saying, I didn't get the last point, or can we find that different slide, or can you pull up the whatever. You have 3 and 4 multiple modes of communication going. You have to be flexible, and Bridget used the word adaptable about the way you communicate with them, even inside of that meeting or inside of that team. Jessica, you say, well, some people more formal, perhaps some people less casual. Great point about, yes, early on, you should be formal. When in doubt, you're more formal in your communications, from email to text to chat and everything in between, and slides and PowerPoint and Word documents and everything in between. But you also have to have that cultural consideration. We have our friends and colleagues in Bangalore, for example. I'm never going to send an all caps team chat with 5 exclamation points on it, because as great as they are as colleagues, something might get lost in there. Frankly, for anybody, a written word, if you can't contextualize it for them, can get lost in that. we've talked before about our friends and colleagues in Japan, that there is an appropriate way to engage and communicate at a leadership level, at a colleague level. So your written word, whatever that might be, that output, you have to have that consideration, even if you're in a multi-mode environment at the same time. I'll give you one quick example of that, where we were doing a global kickoff of an entire corporate initiative some time ago. And what we ended up seeing was, the thing that we didn't anticipate was a third of the audience was actually face to face with each other. They were together, which only a few years ago was like, what? This is outlandish. But in being together, we didn't plan for that. We planned for everything to be remote, so that it actually made it easier for everybody from remote. But for the people in the room, audio was bad, video was bad. We didn't have the projector ready to go. So our ability to communicate with them was actually challenging. There were a bunch of people who were operating off their laptop and phones sitting right next to each other in the same conference room. So that goes to mode and the ability to communicate in a variety of different ways with them, even in a variety of different environments that you're in as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's just so interesting. Like the different cultures, they have different expectations around tone and just directness. And I just want to say one more thing too about that, is that humor and gestures and body language, like they can carry very different meanings depending on the person and kind of their background and the cultural context. And so although something you do might be well intended, like a joke, for example, it could land poorly based on the person depending on the person you're talking to. And that's never a situation you want to be in. So that's why I say, I know that a lot of the times early in your career as well, you're trying to build those relationships and get to know people, and you want to be liked and personable, but just be careful with the jokes and maybe some things that could land not well and maybe touch on sensitive ground, just depending on the person. You just want to be mindful of it. So carry that with you.
Great. I think the last part, and Bridget, I wanted to turn to you actually before we got to the last part of that.
Yeah, Al, when you were talking about that example of, being in the car and somebody's chatting you and everything's that you thought could go wrong is going wrong when you're starting a meeting, I was thinking about also when you do have, especially in today's work environment, you are more likely than not to have a mixture of people that are on the road, in the conference room with you, working from home, working at a site or something. And something that you can do early in your career, which is super helpful and just makes you kind of needed for these types of meetings, is get to a conference room early, set things up ahead of time so nobody has audio issues, so nobody has video issues. Join a meeting early so you can make sure that you're good to go and you have your slides up and you're sharing your right screen and everything like that. Those little things, they go unnoticed, but if they're done correctly, they go unnoticed. If they're done incorrectly, or there is some type of snafu with somebody's chat showing up or somebody's audio not working with their video, that's all anyone will talk about, and then you shouldn't have even had the meeting in the first place. So when you were talking about that, I just wanted to bring that up. It's such a small thing, but it really makes a big difference. And then also, you're the go-to person for that, and you're just making sure everybody's meetings are running smoothly, and it just kind of gets your name out there, gets your foot in the door even a little bit more.
That's a great point. My goodness. I would love, I've never been in one of those meetings. Right? I've never had that.
Happens, right?
Never happened.
Yeah.
I'm sure at some point it will. About 5,000 times now, but hopefully not 5,001 with that advice. It's a great point. I wanted to do just some quick final comments here. For you just starting out, communication is so important. The way that you communicate, how you communicate. If I could sum it up though, is you have to make the effort to meet people where they are, not where you are. I think that pretty much encapsulates everything that we've talked about here today. Regardless of the channel, regardless of the mode, you have to make the effort to meet them where they are. If you do, and you can make that connection, people will respect that. They'll start to trust in you a bit more. Back to your point, Bridget, certainly. Your credibility builds, Jessica, to your point. You start to gain that fit in the organization. And then when you go and you deliver on that work and you can communicate effectively the results of that work, wow, opportunity comes your way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does.
I want to thank everybody for joining us here on our roundtable this week. Tune in again next time. We'll have some more great content. Certainly, comments, questions in the comment section back to us. We love to hear from you. We respond right away as fast as we can, because our goal here is to help you not only survive, but to thrive in your career so you can reach your North Star. We'll see you again next time. Thanks, Bridget. Thanks, Jessica. See you.